So the first wedding I've ever been to as an adult was in 1998. I was 23 and it was my high school friend, and the wedding was going to be in India. I had just gotten back from teaching English in Korea for about a year, and the last thing I wanted to do was travel across the international time zone yet again, which I find to be one of the worst forms of time travel ever created, because depending on which direction you go to, you lose or gain a day. But here was my high school friend, who I've known all my life, and he was begging and pleading me once he realized I was actually not kidding about going to his wedding. And he said, look, you've been a part of my life, and you've been there for every important thing that's ever happened, and if you are not at my wedding will not be real, and it will never have happened. And so, I relented under this passive-aggressive act of guilt-tripping, and didn't bother to unpack, grabbed my passport, and headed over to the international time zone to a summer wedding in India. India in June is like the crotch pit of hell. It is hot and humid, and this is not xenophobic, it's not narrow-minded. I'm being defamatory in the most meteorological way possible. It is awful. But 20 hours and 130 degrees Fahrenheit later, I landed in Mumbai. But this was not the end of my trip, for you see, my friend had forgotten to tell me that this wedding was not going to be in a metropolitan city of India, but was rather going to be 6 hours north in a northern province of Gujarat in a small town called Rajkot. This is the part of the story when I tell that people get obscenely optimistic on my behalf. Oh, it's amazing that you got to go to a different part of a country that no one's ever been to. The subtext being that different parts of countries that no one's ever been to are going to be that much more interesting, or places where there are no tourists are the true character of a country. You often get people who go to, like, let's say Europe, and they tell you this great story that when they were in Rome, they wandered off the off-beaten path and came to this neighborhood where it was untouched by time, and there was a cafe where the cafe breves were the most amazing things on earth, served by a magical innkeeper and his unicorn wife. But the practical reality of going to an untouristy place is, yes, there will probably be less tourists, but it doesn't mean it's going to be any more interesting. And that was what Rajkot in 90s was for me, uninteresting. It would be like you bringing a friend to San Francisco, and to avoid the touristy parts of San Francisco, you took them to Hayward. Rajkot in India was the Hayward of India. And it was going to be there for a week, because weddings in India are not microwaved quickly in Western impatience over a day. They are baked slowly over the course of many days, because this is an ancient, proud civilization where a man sat under a tree for 1,000 years to get his shit together. So I was going to have to sit there for a while and get over myself. And I did. I really did, because Rajkot, the entire city celebrated, because everyone knew everyone there. And to have the entire town celebrate the wedding of my best friend was amazing. And if that's all that happened, this would be a completely different tale. But unfortunately, the parade happened. On the actual day of the ceremony, the tradition is, from a starting point, the bride and groom are escorted to the wedding hall. In this case, it was 2 miles. And it was up to the honor of the groom's party, including myself, to escort the lovely bride and groom in a carriage, or in this case, an 80s white Subaru, because no one makes carriages anymore, from point A to point B, 2 miles, 2 miles per hour, in 130-degree weather, in a full-on wedding burlap regalia, I feel. And we were going 2 miles per hour because the Subaru is not built for speed, but luckily they had air conditioning, which I wish I had, because if I wasn't so dehydrated from heat exhaustion, I probably would have gotten in that fight with those eunuchs. Point of interest on India. They have a caste system, as a lot of people know, and in a subset of that caste system is a group of people called the Hajri. The Hijra. The Hijra are a group of people, because of their sexual orientation, transgenderism, or sexual identification, are persecuted and victims of a lot of bigotry and prejudice even to this day. They're called eunuchs sometimes because some of their members practice castration on themselves and their members. And like a lot of victimized groups, they gain money through panhandling, aggressive panhandling. And what their often targets are weddings. So what often happens is the Hijra will gather and go to a wedding and harass them until they are given money to go away. This has become so endemic that a tradition has come about in the last 20 years, which is that the hijra will arrive, the wedding party will give them a donation or bribe to go away, and the hijra in turn will bless the wedding party with good fortune, because there's a belief that the hijras abstaining from sex gives them mystical powers, which is a superpower I wish I knew about in high school. So, as the hijra approached this sad wedding motorcade, one of my friends got skittish and accidentally pushed one of the hijra away. This started a fight. Now, something you need to understand about the visual aspect of the hijra in this case is when they go out in public, they cross-dress in women's sari, which are colorful and beautiful, just like what you see in pictures and movies. But underneath that is a 6-foot guy, well-muscled, with centuries of cultural repression, and it was directed at me, my friends, and the slow-moving Subaru. Luckily, peace was brokered, and after a generous donation, the hijra left, gave the blessings to the bride and groom, and gave a curse to me and my friends. However, I didn't have enough time to process this being cursed from a cross-dressing eunuch, because the groom's father had come to us and told us at the halfway point that he just discovered that the wedding hall had not been cleaned up from the previous wedding the night before. And it was up to us, the groom's party, in an act of friendship and free labor, to run ahead of the wedding party to clean it up. So we did. And despite this slow-moving herbivore parade, we had about an hour. When we got there was trash and garbage strewn all over the place, and most disgustingly of all, pond spit. Pond, another point of interest, is a very popular chewing substance that Indians like to enjoy. It is like chewing tobacco, except it's leaves, seeds, and lime paste. It is very popular, and it is very disgusting, because they like to spit it wherever they are, whether it's a street, restaurants, or in this case, a wedding hall. But this wasn't the worst part, because, this wasn't the worst part. For in the courtyard, in the face of all logic narrative, there was a cow sitting in the courtyard where the wedding ceremony was supposed to take place. In hindsight, of course there had to be a cow in this story. Of course there had to be a cow at the wedding in this story. Because apparently some idiot the night before had forgotten to lock up the place to prevent the epidemic of trespassing cows who do not respect people's private spaces. So, after an hour, we did a commendable job of cleaning the place of trash, garbage, and pond spit, and a really ill-tempered cow who was not bilingual but still figured out that I did not want him at the wedding. And the wedding arrived, and it was great, and it was full of everything that a wedding has: emotion, love, and exhaustion. And despite the story promoting Indian tourism, I had a great time, and I was very proud to share this special day with my friend. Epilogue. So, my friend's bride had never left India Hayward in her entire life. She had lived there all the time. Everyone she knew was there. She's never even traveled to the southern provinces, been to any metropolitan city. And this wedding meant something really different for her than it does for a lot of the weddings we go to. For her, she was saying goodbye to her family forever. For a few precious exceptions in the future, later on in her life, she was going to not ever see them again, to travel with the love of her life, and raise what would eventually be 2 beautiful children in America. And I felt incredibly fortunate, because at that moment, at the end of the wedding, I realized I was going home. And for me, that's my favorite part of traveling: to go home, to cross over that international time zone, to gain back that day, and share it with my friends and family. And I'm really appreciative that, I'd like to think that because we're all part of someone else's story here on World Storytelling Day, that somewhere right now, across the world, there is a cow and a eunuch telling a story about a really rude American. And I hope their friends are enjoying the story, and I hope you enjoyed mine too. Thank you.